study. It's late summer now, and we look at Redwall Abbey. Here's a beautiful picture of a peaceful summer day. You can see a mole and a mouse and a rabbit and a hare from the long patrol, and the willow leaning over the abbey pond where the big giant fish lives, and the path to the boathouse, and the flowers, and a bee, and a butterfly, and the lily pads on a lazy summer afternoon in Redwall, a peaceful place where animals take respite from great adventures. Today we're going to read a section of Brian Jake's Redwall, the first of his novels about the abbey and its animals. In this series, we'll read a summer poem, and we draw a plan of Redwall Abbey. We'll look at one that I did some time ago and maybe make some improvements on it. For the summer, rise, O lark, soar up on high, sing your praises to the sky. Come, you little humble bee, kiss each blushing rose for me. Fruits upon the orchard bough ripen sweet for summer now. Summer steals in through my dreams, voyaging through dawning like a leaf down shaded streams. To the golden clad morning, hearken to each wondrous day, where the sun is king, keeping warm dark night at bay. Late into soft evening, yonder come the hazy days, basking in the warm sun rays. Gently down the path 'twill soon shimmer in the distant noon. All the earth, and we as well, are under summer's magic spell. And the hazy green gold shade of the leaves, where the flowers are all in full bloom, in the safe confines of Redwall Abbey. This is the first of Brian Jake's books, where we meet the brave hero Matthias. But he didn't start out as a hero. He started out as a comical little figure, wobbling his way among the cloisters. He was an orphan taken in as a dibbon. Dibbin being a small baby creature, and all of the animals at Redwall Abbey care for them. And Matthias's first summer as a grown-up begins the story of Redwall. And here we have the story of the feast of summer. Shall we read this one as we draw a map of Redwall? Let's have a look at what's inside Redwall. And this is a plan that I drew some time ago. I've got all of the red walls of the abbey, the front gate, the front lawn, many of these places described in several of the books. The kitchen gardens and stores, and the greenhouse. The kitchen's a very important place where all of the feasts are prepared, and there are cellars there that have secrets in them, because Redwall was built on the ruins of a former abbey called Lomedge, and there's the ruins of one of the towers of this abbey that was much bigger than Redwall in its day. And I've got the south gate and the east gate, the orchard, the abbey pond, the strawberry patch, the north gate, the garden, and of course all of the battlements and watchtowers, because Redwall is in a country full of dangers. They need protection for their peaceful life and supporting all the creatures. There's the Great Hall, the bell tower, the infirmary and dormitory, the library, and I put some courtyards and gardens in there. I think we can make some improvements on that. What do you think? Let's use our favorite notepad here. And pencil. Well, soft eraser and a straight edge. Now, I'd like to make the walls square. While I draw, we can listen to the story of the summer feast at Redwall. Beneath the great hall of Redwall, candles burned bright in their sconces. This was the cavern hole of the mice. What a night it was going to be! Between them, Matthias and Brother Alf had caught and landed a fully grown grayling. They had fought and played the big fish for nearly 2 hours, finally wading into the shallows and dragging it to the bank. It was nearly 2 pounds in weight, a tribute to Brother Alf's angling skills combined with the youthful muscles of Matthias and their joint enthusiasm. Constance the badger had to be called. Gripping the fish in her strong jaws, she followed the 2 mice to the abbey kitchen and delivered the catch for them. Then she made her farewells. They would see her at the Jubilee feast that evening, along with lots of other Mossflower residents who had been invited to share the festivities. Brother Alf and Matthias stood proudly beside their catch amidst the culinary hustle and bustle until they were noticed by Friar Hugo. Busy as he was, the enormously fat Hugo, who would have no other title but that of friar, stopped what he was doing. Wiping the perspiration from his brow with the dandelion which he held with his tail, he waddled about, inspecting the fish. Nice shiny scales, bright eyes, beautifully fresh. Friar Hugo smiled so joyfully that his face disappeared amidst deep dimples. He shook Alf by the paw and clapped Matthias heartily on the back as he called out between chuckles, "Bring the white gooseberry wine. Fetch me some rosemary, thyme, beech nuts and honey, quickly. And now, friends, now," he squeaked, waving the dandelion wildly with his tail, "I, Hugo, will create a grayling a la Redwall that will melt in the mouth of mice. Fresh cream, I need lots of fresh cream. Bring some mint leaves, too." They had left Friar Hugo ranting on, delirious in his joy, as they both went off to bathe and clean up, combing whiskers, curling tails, shining noses, and the 101 other grooming tasks that Redwall mice always performed in preparation for an epic feast. The rafters of Cavern Hole rang to the excited buzz and laughter of the assembled creatures. Hedgehogs, moles, squirrels, woodland creatures and mice of all kinds, field mice, hedge mice, dormice, even a family of poor little church mice. Kindly helpers scurried about, making everybody welcome. "Hello there, Mrs. Church Mouse. Sit the children down, I'll get them some raspberry cordial." "Why, Mr. Bankfall, so nice to see you. How's the back? Better now? Good. Here, try a drop of this peach and elderberry brandy." Matthias's young head was in a whirl. He could not remember being so happy in all his life. Winifred the otter nudged him. "I say, Matthias, where's this giant grayling that you and old Alf hooked by the claw? I wish that I could land a beauty like that. Nearly a 2-pounder, wasn't it?" Matthias swelled with pride. Such praise, and from the champion fisher herself, an otter. Tim and Tess, the twin church mouse babes, felt Matthias's strong arm muscles and giggled aloud in admiration. He helped to serve them 2 portions of apple and mint ice cream. Such nice little twins. Was it only 3 months ago that he had helped Sister Stephanie get them over tail rickets? My, how they had grown. Abbot Mortimer sat in his carved willow chair, beaming thanks as one by one the new arrivals laid their simple homemade gifts at his feet. An acorn cup from a squirrel, a fishbone comb from from the otters, mossy bark sandals made by the moles, and many more fine presents too numerous to mention. The abbot shook his head in amazement. Even more guests were arriving. He beckoned Friar Hugo to his side. A whispered conference was held. Matthias could only hear snatches of the conversation. "Don't worry, Father Abbot. There will be enough for all. How are the cellar stocks, Hugo?" "Enough to flood the abbey pond, Father. And nuts? We must not run short of nuts." "You name them, we've got them. Even candied chestnuts and acorn crunch. We could feed the district for a year." "Dairy produce?" "Oh, that. I've got a cheddar cheese that 4 badgers couldn't roll, plus 10 other varieties." Good. Thank you, Hugo. Oh, we must thank Alf and young Matthias for that magnificent fish. What fine anglers they are. There's enough to keep the entire abbey going for a week. Excellent mice, well done. Matthias blushed to his tail's end. The otters, the otters. A loud, jolly cry went up as 3 otters in clown costumes came bounding in. Such acrobatics. They tumbled, balanced, and gyrated, cavorting comically across the laden tabletops without upsetting as much as a single sultana. They ended up hanging from the rafters by a strand of ivy, to wild applause. Ambrose Spike, the hedgehog, did his party piece. He amazed everyone with his feats of legerdemain. Eggs were taken from a squirrel's ear. A young mouse's tail stood up and danced like a snake. The incredible vanishing conker trick was performed in front of a group of little harvest mice who kept squeaking, "He's got it hidden in his prickles." But had he? Ambrose made a few mysterious passes and produced the conker. Straight out of his mouth, with an awe-struck infant mouse. Was it magic? Of course it was. All activity ceased as the great Joseph bell tolled out 8 o'clock from the abbey belfry. Silently, all the creatures filed to their allotted places. They stood reverently behind the seats, with heads lowered. Abbot Mortimer rose, and solemnly spread his paws wide, encompassing the festive board. He said the grace. Fur and whisker, tooth and claw, all who enter by our door, nuts and herbs, leaves and fruits, berries, tubers, plants and roots, silver fish whose life we take, only for a meal to make. This was followed by a loud and grateful Amen. There was a mass clattering of chairs and scraping of forms as everyone was seated. Matthias found himself next to Tim and Tess on the one paw, and Cornflower Field Mouse on the other. Cornflower was a quiet young mouse, but undoubtedly very pretty. She had the longest eyelashes Matthias had ever seen, the brightest eyes, the softest fur, the whitest teeth. Matthias fumbled with a piece of celery. He turned to see if the twins were coping adequately. You never could tell with these baby church mice. Brother Alf remarked that Friar Hugo had excelled himself, as course after course was brought to the table. Tender freshwater shrimp garnished with cream and rose leaves, deviled barley pearls in acorn puree, apple and carrot chews, marinated cabbage stalks steeped in creamed white turnip with nutmeg. A chorus of oohs and ahs greeted the arrival of 6 mice pushing a big trolley. was the grayling. Wreaths of aromatic steam drifted around cavern hole. It had been baked to perfection. Friar Hugo entered with a slight swagger, added to his ungainly waddle. He swept off his chef's cap with his tail and announced in a somewhat pompous squeak, "Milord Abbot, honoured guests from Mossflower area, and members of the abbey, I wish to present my pièce de résistance." "Oh, get on with it, Hugo." After some icy staring about to detect the culprit, and several smothered sniggers from around the room, the little fat friar puffed himself up once more and declaimed firmly, "Grayling à la Redwall." Polite but eager applause rippled round as Hugo sliced the fish and placed the first steaming portion onto a platter. With suitable dignity he presented it to the abbot, who thanked him graciously. All eyes were on the Father Abbot. He took a dainty fork loaded precariously with steaming fish. Carefully he transferred it from plate to mouth. Chewing delicately, he turned his eyes upwards, then closed them, munching away steadily, whiskers a-twitch, jaws working, his curled-up tail holding a napkin which neatly wiped his mouth. The abbot's eyes reopened. He beamed like the sun on midsummer morn. "Quite wonderful. Perfectly exquisite. Friar Hugo, you are truly my champion chef. Please serve our guests your masterwork." Any further speech was drowned by hearty cheers. Gradually, the feast in Cavern Hall slackened off, and so had a lot of belts. Redwall mice and their guests sat back replete. There were still great quantities of food uneaten. Abbot Mortimer whispered in Friar Hugo's ear, "Friar, I want you to pack up a large sack with food, hazelnuts, cheese, bread, cakes, anything you see fit. Give it to Mrs. Churchmouse as secretly as you can without attracting attention. Poverty is an ugly spectre when a mousewife has as many mouths to feed as she does. Oh, and be sure that her husband doesn't suspect what you are doing. John Churchmouse may be poor, but he is also proud. I fear he might not accept charitable gifts." Hugo nodded knowingly and waddled off to do his abbot's bidding. Cornflower and Matthias had become quite friendly. They were young mice of the same age. Though their temperaments were different, they found something in common, an interest in Tim and Tess, the twin church mice. They had passed a pleasant evening joking and playing games with the little creatures. Tess had clambered onto Matthias's lap and fallen asleep, whereupon Tim did likewise, in the velvety fur of Cornflower. She smiled at Matthias as she stroked baby Tim's small head. Ah, bless their little paws, don't they look peaceful? Matthias nodded in agreement. Colin Vole tittered aloud and remarked rather foolishly, "Ooh, would you look at Matthias and Cornflower there, nursing those two babbies like they was an old wedded couple. Well, crumble my bank." Brother Alf reprimanded him sharply. "Here now, you little keep-a-latch on that silly tongue of yours. Colin Vole, don't you know that some day Matthias will be a Redwall mouse? And don't let me hear you slandering young Cornflower. She's a decent mouse from a good family. Mark my words, Master Vole. I could say a thing or two to your mum and Dad. Only last evening I saw you playing catch the bulrush with that young harvest mouse. What was her name now?" Colin Vole blushed until his nose went dry. He flounced off, swishing his tail, muttering about going outside to take the air. Matthias caught a nod and a glance from the abbot. Excusing himself to Cornflower, he deposited the sleeping Tess gently upon his chair and went across to him. "Ah, Matthias, my son, here you are. Did you enjoy my Jubilee feast?" "Thank you, Father," Matthias replied. "Good, good," chuckled the abbot. "Now, I was going to ask Brother Alf or Edmund to go on a special errand, but they are no longer young mice, and both look quite weary at this late hour. So I thought I might ask my chief grayling catcher to carry out this special task for me." Matthias could not help standing a bit taller. "Say the word and I'm your mouse, sir." The abbot leaned forward and spoke confidentially. "Do you see the church mouse family? Well, it's such a long way back home for them on foot. Good heavens, and there are so many of them. I thought it would be a splendid idea if you were to drive them home in the abbey cart, along with any others going that way. Constance Badger would pull the cart, of course, while you act as guide and bodyguard. Take a good stout staff with you, Matthias." The young mouse needed no second bidding. Drawing himself up to his full height, he saluted in a smart military fashion. "Leave it to me, Father Abbot. Old Constance is a bit slow-thinking. I'll take complete responsibility." The abbot shook with silent laughter as he watched Matthias march off with a soldier-like swagger. Flip-flop, flip-flop. He tripped and fell flat on his tail. "Oh dear, I'll have to get that young mouse some sandals that aren't so big," the abbot said to himself for the second time that day. Well, what a stroke of luck. Fancy Cornflower's family living so close to the church mouse brood. Matthias was only too glad to offer them a lift home. Would Miss Cornflower like to sit next to him? She most certainly would. Cornflower's parents sat inside the cart, her mum helping Mrs. Churchmouse with the little ones, while her dad chatted away with John Churchmouse as they shared a pipe of old bracken twist. Friar Hugo came out and dumped a bulky sack next to Mrs. Churchmouse. "Abbot says to thank you for the loan of bowls and tablecloths, ma'am." The fat friar gave her a huge wink. "All comfy back there?" called Matthias. "Right, off we go, Constance." The big badger trundled the cart away as they called their good nights. She nodded at Methuselah, the ancient gatekeeper mouse, as the cart rolled out into the road. A silver golden moon looked down from a star-pierced summer night. Matthias gazed upwards, feeling as if he were slowly turning with the silent earth. Peace was all about him. The baby mice inside the cart whimpered fitfully in their small secret dreams. Constance ambled slowly along, as though she were out on a nighttime stroll, pulling no weight at all. The stout ash staff lay forgotten on the footboard. Cornflower dozed against Matthias's shoulder. She could hear the gentle lull of her father's voice and that of John Churchmouse, blending with the hum of nocturnal insects from the meadow and hedges on this balmy summer night. The summer of the late rose. There. So I've drawn a little sketch of our Redwall Abbey with some of our favourite spots. We've got the front gate and the gatehouse there, and the two towers, and the beautiful front lawn with trees everywhere. An abbey pond with a boat and a boathouse, a strawberry patch, and berry bushes, and an orchard, and our big tall bell tower at at the end of the great hall, backing onto the quarters and study for the abbot, the historian, and the older animals who take care of the abbey. And of course the library. I've put it south facing with ceiling lights. The kitchen gardens, walled in here with all of our herbs and culinary plants, and the abbot's garden with a little fountain there for peace and contemplation. A little stone courtyard there outside the kitchen garden, and the kitchens and cellars there next to the dormitory and infirmary for all the little dibbins, and a courtyard here with the well, the little covered walk, sort of a little cloister there. It's a very peaceful place for our animals and for our imagination this summer. One last look at some of the pictures from our Redwall book. The images of summer and animals enjoying themselves. And they're having a picnic in the orchard. All the little dibbins setting it up. And the badger den mother, and all the apples becoming ripe on the trees in the late summer, and the abbey bell tower in the distance. And there's a baby dibbin there, and badger's taking care of. All the flowers in the pots. The hedgehogs and the mice and the moles. And the squirrel cutting the cake. And there's the abbot asleep with two mole dibbins, with his cup of tea and berries on the table, and an otter there with a patch on his eye, probably from the pearls of Lutra. And that is our summer at Redwall Abbey. I hope you've enjoyed it, my friend. Thank you for spending this time with me in the study. Be good to yourself, be kind to others, and be extraordinary.